Hi, Pete. Great to see you. How are you?
Great, John. Good to see you.
I'm excited about today. We're going to talk about marketing in the context of the problem space that your company, Xembly, is attacking, which is improving meetings. And I was looking for inspirational quotes about meetings and as a way of teeing up an interesting question. I really couldn't find it. Here's what I found. Meetings move at the speed of the slowest mind in the room. That was one quote. A
Was that
second
your
quote.
quote? Was that your quote?
That was not my quote. I'm the slowest mind in the room, though, typically. Second was people who enjoy meetings should not be in charge of anything. That was the second one. And the third one was a meeting is an event in which the minutes are kept and the hours are lost. I guess you've been studying this a lot. Why is there negative sentiment around meetings, and why are meetings in a lot of times broken?
Yeah, I think it's a good question. First off, we come at this from a different angle, um, and our belief is that there's this common misconception that meetings are bad. You obviously articulated that general feeling, and importantly, people are wanting less meetings. Um, in fact, like if you think about it, like some of the best, most productive work comes out of really good meetings. I remember conversations you and I have had where you said yourself, like coming out of a great meeting, like is like one of the most like charging things that you can do like during your day. And if you're to think about like some of the best people in the world, whether who are like the most successful, whether it's Bezos or you know or Steve Jobs back in the day, like they didn't have less meetings. Like they didn't come in saying I need less meetings. What they did was make sure that the time they spent and the meetings they had like were the right ones and they were incredibly effective, right? And the right things were happening, that they were prepared going in, or during the meeting, that it was very clear what the accountabilities were, and therefore like what the follow-ups would be and who and when those follow-ups were due. So a lot of this has comes down to, I think, organizational pressures and pressures people put on themselves to attend every meeting. Going back to the litany of things you have to do to have a great meeting, like preparation, taking notes, finding time to execute, post meeting, like all those things are tasks. And the reality is, like the best people in the world, like going back to the Bezoses and the jobs, like they had great people around them doing those things for them. And most workers today, really the significant majority don't. And so all those tasks are pushed on their lap. And so the reason they hate these events is because they have to do a lot of work. And what we see is that most workers, knowledge workers, spend 10 to 20 hours a week in executing what I'll call like mundane, routine tasks. Schedule a meeting, go take some notes. Like I have to create an agenda. That's a pain. Like, did I capture all the action items now? I have to go figure out if I did and format it something I can send out at night. Oh yeah, now I have to find time to do all those things. So it's not the meeting itself, I think. It's all the things that come after it that create a lot of complexity for people.
Yeah, I was going to ask you what you thought the biggest culprit was, and you've hit on some of those things. I was wondering, like, is it laziness? Is it leaders? Because you're right. You and I have been in a lot of great meetings, and I can think of myself as have been in a lot of great meetings, like when I was at Amazon, and also I was in some not so impressive meetings at that same company. And when I'm at when I'm at my best, if I'm running a meeting, I have a really detailed agenda up front. I'm going through that agenda after it's over. There are clear notes and action items. And that's very time consuming, and it's hard to do each and every time. One of the things that is fun reading your company's feed is you've done a lot of research asking people to share their experiences on meetings. What are some of the funniest data points, maybe not funny, but most prescient data points you found in doing this research in incubating the product in the company?
Oh, funniest? I'd have to think about the funniest. I think the like what is the funniest thing?
Well, the one thing that I saw was that some people would prefer fewer meetings over a raise. Did I get that one
Yeah, like
right?
that. When you said funny, my head goes to like what's funny. Like I actually think about that stuff as not funny. Like I think the specifics were, something like a quarter, a third of people would prefer. It was actually to have fewer meetings over getting a 10% salary increase. If you think about that, like that's actually like that's not funny. It's pretty serious. Um, I, I think the things that we hear are along the lines of the quotes that you articulated earlier. But like what we're also seeing is if you go to some of the world's best performing organizations, that they're able to, by doing some of the things that you said and being prepared and understanding like how to conduct themselves during that time, they're actually able to be like really efficient. Like what I don't think works is I don't think these no meeting day policies work. I think you're just asking people to jam more meetings into the other days. And so, I think people are trying to figure out like how to run their life. And the reality is it's not that hard. Like the secret to having a really, really good week is to plan to have a really, really good week. And it's during the week to make sure that you're staying on top of the things that make that week really good. And so the reality is if you look historically at why executive assistants have been really important and why chiefs of staff have been really important, it's because those people are the gatekeepers to that success. And so the question is like, well, how do you democratize those services and make them available to the masses? And if you can do that well, then what you should see is a great unlock. Like the great unlock is what I think of the enterprise.
That's
Like
a good.
yeah. Go ahead.
That's a good segue, Pete, into maybe you can tell the listeners what exactly is Xembly, the product, and how does it work?
Sure. Xembly is an automated chief of staff. So what we've done is we use AI to marry traditional executive assistant and chief of staff duties and help users be as effective as they can be during the week. And so, for example, if you think about like what are those services, like typical EA or chief of staff, they execute the following things: schedule meetings for the individual, help that individual prepare by creating amazing agendas, take perfect notes during the meeting so the individual doesn't have to or the attendees don't have to. Make sure that those notes have very clear action items, owners, and due dates, and that those action items are distributed clearly and quickly after a meeting. Make sure that that individual now, given those action items, is able to make time on their calendar to execute the things that they're responsible for. Make recommendations on how to improve that user's schedule and so that they can become more efficient. Should they do that meeting again? Shouldn't they do it again? Do they have a growing list of action items that are popping up throughout the week where they need more block time for themselves to complete those things? So I'd say our V1 of Xembly has been to automate all those services for a user and democratize the chief of staff function for everybody. And I think the principles that we've constructed here to do that are a few. One is our product is conversational. So it's focused on natural language. We have a conversational agent named Xena, who sits within your existing workflow, whether that's in Slack, in your email, your calendar, or in Zoom, and is able to execute those tasks and importantly have context throughout all the tasks of your day. The second principle is like we think it's important to be multi-channel. So our product is embedded in your existing workflow. It's not a new system. You use it within Slack, you use it within Calendar, within Zoom, and that way you're not having to go learn a new operating system or new language. And the last is it's fully automated. I'm too old and too lazy to go use technology that actually creates more work for me. And so, you know this because we've worked together, but we've built products that are really trying to eliminate that 10 to 20 hours of task work that users are doing. And importantly, like not create additional tasks. An example of that would be there are products out there today that take meeting notes. And what they do is they actually transcribe the meeting and they give you that transcription. And some of those products are very good, but it requires the user to take that transcript and turn it into a summary and action items that they can share. And that takes time for the user to go do that. And so our belief was that the user shouldn't have to do any of that. Technology is far enough along where we can automate the significant majority, if not all of that work, and perhaps leave some light editing to them just to refine what we send.
So I think this implies that Xena is listening to what, if Xena was in this meeting, into what you and I were saying, and then understanding, like when you have been assigned something or I've been assigned something or we've talked in depth about a certain subject. Have you thought about how plugging in Xena when people are in the office together in an in-person meeting, how would that work?
Yeah, a lot of this comes down to, so it works today. A lot of this comes down to speaker segmentation and fingerprinting. So it's having technology that knows that person talking in a room is John Busby, right? And being smart about who's there based on prior dialogue. And so we have systems that have done a really good job at disambiguating who speakers are, whether they're in separate channels on a Zoom or in a room together. And as you know, John, our CTO was one of the founding team members for Microsoft Connect and HoloLens. And so if you wanted to call in an airstrike while playing Halo back in the day and said, Xbox, I want to start a chat with John, he was the person who built all the technology that enabled that. And so, which was the precursor to Alexa. So we have a lot of experience at understanding what I'll call complex, unbounded dialogue and translating it into well-written prose.
That's really cool. As have you seen the output of this? Has anything sort of surprised you in analyzing conversations or meetings in terms of what people talk about, what they don't talk about? What are you learning about how meetings can be improved in real time through seeing the data that comes out of Xena and Xembly?
So I don't know what people are saying or what they're doing. We don't look at any of that data. I think the thing that we're seeing is, as you know, in any product, you have intuition and theories about like what it can do and what problems it can solve. And importantly, like hopefully how you can 10x, output or productivity or kind of whatever your metric is for that user base. And certainly like we have those metrics that we had believed would happen. I think the thing that's been most surprising to me as people first gain trust that what we deliver is accurate, right? It's a little bit like, hey, can this thing really take perfect notes and execute scheduling perfectly and do all these things? It sounds great, but can it do it? So once we get over that trust barrier and they actually see it, they stop taking notes themselves, because you could imagine at first, they still want to kind of make sure that we can do what we say. What ends up happening is something I didn't expect, which is people become they're intentional and they're able to like really focus and be productive during that session. And so an example would be we have a global, Fortune 500 company that we work with, and I just got an email the other day from a technical program manager who's deep in the bowels of this organization in Europe, and he literally said, like, I cannot believe, like, you can't believe like the freedom I have now that I don't have to sit there and scribble, taking notes furiously, I can actually like really focus on making this meeting as productive as possible. And so I think like to me, like we have a product that I'm excited about because it's creating emotion for a user. It's helping them, but like he felt so compelled to tell me how he's truly been able to like make a big impact, not just for his organization, but for himself, like personally. He doesn't have to go now at night and scribble down notes and go relook at them and think about them. He doesn't feel bad like he maybe missed something. He can contribute to the meeting in a way that hopefully makes the meeting better and maybe makes him a better employee so he can project his career out further. Like there's lots of things that we're starting to see happen when you can free individuals to do their best work by taking the tasks away from them.
That's such a great point about note taking during meetings. I was literally doing this earlier this week. We had a very productive summit on one of our digital brands, but I found myself saying sometimes during the meeting, I've got to remember this one thing, and so I write it down in the way that I want to, and then I've missed the last 30 seconds. It's hard.
Yeah.
It's hard to multitask.
The other thing that happens is, and this is in the world of stuff happens that you didn't expect, is that people sign up for more things to do than they believed. And so we've also had users that have said, oh man, I didn't realize I had 6 action items coming out of that meeting. And so they're also getting more work now too. But that's okay. Like that's what they were on the hook for. We're just helping them be accountable to it.
Well, there's almost never perfect notes taken. And so there's often a disconnect in the next meeting about who is responsible for what and what exactly it meant. And I'm sure that Zena's still learning and figuring all that out too. I want to shift a little bit to go to market, because you talked about an enterprise that you're working with and is starting to get deeper and deeper in their organization. So to give the listener some context, how long have you been building Xembly, and how did you make sure it was the right thing and when to approach customers and how to sell into organizations? Like how did you approach that as you were developing the product?
Yeah, so let's just skip over the why. Like, why did we do this? Because I think that's a different part of the conversation. So I think the thing that I've learned, and you know this, we talked about this. You can't, and while it sounds simple, and everyone says, of course, you need to do that. You cannot underestimate the power of going really deep on the problem you're trying to solve. And I think a lot of companies start out by picking a problem and doing some work around it and talking to friends and maybe doing some market research, which there's lots of unconscious bias in, and building a product. And in reality, like that product is probably a feature, it's not a business. And so I think like the first thing, we really spent a lot of, so we've been doing this for 2 years. We were building hard building for 18 months before we gave it to anybody. And in part of that, and during that time, we spent more time than I've ever spent going like very, very deep into like what were the actual core problems, and can we build, and what is the thing that we need to build that truly like 10x is the output for that person. Because if you can't put your finger on it, you're not going to have this what I'll call is a habit forming flywheel, where your product is like must be used. Number one. Number two, you're not going to be able to grow organically by word of mouth. And so what you hear right now in a lot of like, I'll call like just general enterprise or SaaS metrics, is this newish role called growth marketer or head of growth. And what that individual's responsible for is driving product-led growth. How do we drive growth out of the product? Well, that's good, but the first thing you want, we focus on is like, how do you drive word of mouth? Because if you don't have word of mouth, people aren't gonna like love your product and use your product. If you have word of mouth, then you can overlay product-led growth because you'll be sticky. And so that long way of saying, like, we spend a lot of time on the product and then the problem. And once we had that, we understood what we needed to build. I think our decision point to extend, like to go to market, was really one of two, which is, do you open this up to the masses because every worker has the problems that we've articulated, or do you do something different? And in our case, the different was pick a few dozen companies, find the personas that you think you really matter to, and spend 6 or 8 months going really deep with those personas and proving that you can scale organizationally. And that's what we chose. We chose the latter. So, and the reason is we didn't want to end up in a place where we had, I'll just call looky-loos, who wanted to see new cool technology and try it out and, be spread across like lots of organizations, without like a clear understanding of the persona, and then therefore later on an ability to drive monetization. Like, we thought it was more important to go really deep in an organization, like prove that we could drive value for one user, one team, one company, and if we could prove that, then our ability to like really change the dynamics of the market, which is be like help workers be very productive with that productivity translating down to a company's bottom line. If we could prove that, then we would have a large global business. And so that's the path we took, and that's the path that we're on now.
What do you think some of the hooks are that get someone to adopt? Because I can remember, I don't know if this product is an inspiration in a way to you, but I remember when Slack started to like spread like wildfire throughout my organization, and because I think I agree that there are like looky-loos that want to just try out new stuff, but there are also folks who are predisposed to not want to use something new because it's something that they have to like think about and figure out. So like what are some of the things that you felt like really are causing this like viral spread?
When you receive perfect notes and a follow-up message from Xena to execute those action items for you, it's magical. And so what happens is users, use the product and they shared their notes and everyone is like, what is that? And so that, for us, I just should believe that your product has to have a wow to it in order to have that dynamic that you just articulated with Slack. And then once you capture that user, it has to have some surprises. And so our wow is, holy crap, those are really awesome. What is that? And they have a wow moment when they use the product. The surprise are all the things that Xena does for you after the fact that are more EA-esque. And so that's why we've seen this, well, I'll just call it these viral moments organizationally, because we're delivering on the thing that people have talked about for a while. It's not yet Iron Man, but we're making our way towards really, really impacting how people work.
So where are things now in terms of if someone's interested? You mentioned you've gone deep on a couple of organizations. Have you moved to that next step yet, or is it a ways off?
Yeah, no, we were in closed beta for 6 months with dozens of well-known companies, and we in June announced that we have this product, and we talked about it as people were starting to find it, and people can sign up on our wait list now, and that's how we're continuing to go through that wait list and make sure that the people that are joining the wait list fit the dynamics that we think are important in order to be successful. We will open it up to the masses. My guess is that won't be this year, because we're having a lot of success organizationally now, just scaling, and we think we should do that for a while longer before we open it up broadly.
That makes sense. So Pete, maybe to close things out, I've known you a long time. We still look look 25, 26, you know, but I've known you a long time. And you've had a lot of success as an entrepreneur, as a CEO. When you were approaching Xembly, what did you do differently this time around based on experiences that you had in the past that sort of informed how you wanted to build this company differently?
Yeah. I've been lucky to work with great people and have great mentors, like including you. Like my teams have been, as you know, like very close, and we've all been lucky together. Is what I'd say is we've created organizations that we wanted to be at and felt good about, and so that's why I think we've had success. I've also had spectacular failures, and the one before Xembly was an example of a spectacular failure I had, which was a private company going into the consumer space, which I didn't know well, and so my learning was you need to focus your attention kind of against two vectors. One is like, what is like the big global problem that you think that is important to solve? Like that's, business 101. What's the biggest market I can go after? And is there a really big problem there? But the second vector is maybe more important, which is like, what do I bring to that opportunity that allows me to kind of tackle it from a differentiated like perspective? Like why am I okay to go after that market? Like I could not build rockets. I should not run a social media company. But I can run a very successful conversational AI enterprise business. And that's based on the experience, 14 years of experience I have at my prior company, developing and deploying technologies globally for businesses to help them understand, what their customers are saying to them over the phone. And so when you fast forward to what we're doing now, we had this view of big global problem that I'm passionate about, and we have a team that has product market, like I'll call founder market fit. Like we can actually go execute against the thing that we want to do.
I love that phrase, founder market fit. Did you just coin that? Or
No, I'm sure I stole it.
I really like that. Well, Pete, I wish you the best of luck with Xembly, and great to see you today. Thanks for talking to me.